welcome, Gillian. So for you who are hopping on, this is Gillian Doucet Campbell, my friend from the Stewardship kind of gathering. Oh, we've got some more people coming on, so welcome, everyone. I'm here with Gillian. Gillian works for the Diocese of Niagara in Stewardship, Development, and Major Gifts. And I'm really pleased for us to be having this conversation today. We've been spending the last several weeks, while I just sit up a bit here, just really talking about financial generosity in the age of COVID-19. But I thought, first of all, Gillian, tell us more about yourself and what it is you do in the Diocese of Diocese of Niagara. Sorry.
Even though I have a Quebec mug,
Your Quebec mug.
Ontario, with the Diocese of Niagara. What do I do? Mostly what I have been doing just over the past year is connecting with parishes and working with them on developing their strategy for stewardship. So from fund development, though, but leaning more into the spiritual aspects of what stewardship truly means. And then also working with our ancillary programs, trying to work with them with their fund development specifically. So everything from writing thank you letters to calling donors to great receipts, things like that, all the small things that make a big difference.
Oh, I love that. Great receipts. Tell me about a great receipt. What does that look like?
Well, in my opinion, a great receipt includes a thank you letter on the receipt itself. It's not just a one-page printed off receipt stuffed in an envelope mailed off. It's a letter that acknowledges, again, hopefully for the second time, at least if you receipt on a monthly or biweekly basis, a letter just saying thanks again, and this is what your gift is doing. So. And then at the bottom is the little tear off that they can take or photocopy or whatever it is they do. Yeah.
Fantastic. And of course, you can never thank enough, can you?
Right. Well, they say it takes 7 times before somebody realizes they've been thanked. So
7 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unless it's meaningful and significant, but we tend not to always do the meaningful, significant thanking.
Yeah. I know. I think that's so nice taking the time to do the thank you and to, as you said, to make it meaningful and significant and so tied into what the person is giving.
Yeah.
Makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
I know when I've been thanked in a meaningful way, it's like I feel really, even though I work sort of in that business, I always feel more inclined towards that organization, if it's a church or whatever, to say, oh, wow,
Yeah.
Makes me want to give again.
I'm a sucker for a good thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Greg has joined us from the UK. Welcome, Greg. Nice to see you. We got to catch up over a beer sometime. And Andy O'Donnell's joined, so people are hopping on. I'm here with my guest, Gillian Doucet Campbell, Stewardship, Development, and Major Gifts of the Diocese of Niagara. And this is our Beyond the Plate show. So one of the things we've been talking about over the last several weeks is, really the challenge that COVID-19 has put before us in terms of encouraging generosity and helping churches manage the whole financial generosity piece. And it's really kind of like putting a finger on that, hasn't it? It's really highlighted strengths and weaknesses for our communities in that area. Have you been seeing that in Niagara as well?
Yeah, for sure. It's put a spotlight on the different areas where, and sometimes I feel like as maybe congregational care and development people, we've been saying all along, suddenly it's they're like, oh yes, I get it now. Let's work on this. So those things. As we were chatting yesterday, just focusing on gratitude. When we met yesterday as a group of stewardship people across eastern side of Canada, the whole first bit of our conversation was all about talking about gratitude and the importance of gratitude and seeing people's perspectives change because of talking about gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, there is that phrase, gratitude is the gateway drug to generosity. I'm not sure but we should use that on a live show, but we just did. But I think it's true, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And there was gratitude was about just like grateful for the fact that, we meet every Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so in the Diocese of Niagara, Bishop Susan has been doing Sunday prayer service every week. And we have a contact live form where people can write in to say, their name, email, and a prayer request. And oftentimes in the prayer request, it starts off with just being grateful that the Diocese of Niagara can gather together every Sunday collectively, and how they just are so appreciative of that time together. And then some prayer requests are often included in that, which is also wonderful because it's another way of corporately being together and recognizing that. So I get to read all of them and respond to people. So it's a highlight of my week for sure.
That's nice. As Leanne put it in the comments, gratitude is the gateway to generosity. Maybe we can put it that way. That's something a church could do. I was thinking, a church right now could get together on Zoom and really do an evening or something where they talk about gratitude and just what does this church mean to me? What has this meant to me? It really begins in the Christian community, I think.
Yeah. Well, and at many parishes, when I chat with them, I'll say, once or twice a month or more, if you can, have a gratitude moment in your service and just have somebody share, 1 to 2 minutes about what they're grateful for the church, or ways they're seeing God move in their lives and that they're grateful for that, just different things. Because again, it is a reminder for the whole community together of, oh yeah, I am grateful for this. This is why I'm here. So yeah, it's a good.
I love that. Have a gratitude moment once or twice in the service. Yeah. I know we also talked about shifting away from announcements towards mission updates. So I'll get onto that in a little bit, but how about instead of having announcements, having a gratitude moment?
Well, and I loved that yesterday. I forget who said that, missional updates. I was like, that's what we should be having.
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah.
Rather than announcements, missional updates. Absolutely.
Right. When it is all in the phrasing, it is in the phrasing, just like pre-authorized debit or pre-authorized payment. I always tell people, call it pre-authorized giving. It's not a transaction. This is not about giving money. This is about giving your gifts to God and to the church and in a faithful response. So don't make it about the transaction. So, and instead of announcements, make it about what it is the church is doing together. So that missional moment, of course.
Yes. And that's something that I think would just speak so much more to guests who are there about that church. People coming in and checking things out. Like, wow, this church is doing something, maybe something that they really believe in as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as Laurie Gunther Reeser says, is my other great quote, people give to a cause they believe in.
Right.
So she said it's so much more about the ministry. It's about our response to God than it is about the transaction. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. There is a story. I think his name is Love is his last name, John Love, I think. Anyway, guru of fundraising in Canada. And he talks about when he meets with organizations, he'll say, not-for-profits, who are the founding people and why do you think they created this organization? What was it in them that said, yes, we need to do this? And then lean into that, because that's the reason why people are giving. They're giving because it is a mission, a part of their life. It's not just a tax receipt or a monetary transaction or the right thing to do, but they're connected and they're showing their connections by giving.
Yeah, and I think as well that really can shift the whole atmosphere of a church. Because we're trying to shift away from fear. From morning, Nikki. Nikki's joined us as well. Good to see you. Away from fear or obligation or scarcity.
Yes.
There's something different about a church that's practicing gratitude, even if they don't have the biggest building or the biggest resources, but they're grateful for who they are. They're grateful for what God has done. It shifts the whole atmosphere. And that in itself is very attractive, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and when you dig deep into gratitude, it comes from a welling up of a recognition that the way I see it is you're free within that. And you're able to respond to that joy, which is different from happiness, that whole thing. And so you are living into that gratitude of what you have been given, and what therefore you can give back because of that. So it's not, again, it's not a surface level thing when you dig down deep. It's it's really a response. Yeah.
Yeah, a response to what God has done and what God is doing. Just want to welcome Bill Gray, Archdeacon Bill Gray. Nice to see you, Bill. Bill, we've got to catch up too. I haven't talked to you forever. Hope you're doing well. And we've just been talking about gratitude. And I think actually right now, is that a great sort of, just a great attitude to be focusing on right now, especially that we can't meet together, that we're scattered and that we have to meet in these other ways. And suddenly it's like, how much these places have meant to us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of, I think, a lot of what Brené Brown, for instance, talks about. She talks a lot about gratitude and recognizing the things in our lives that we can be grateful for. And like I said, those prayer requests and notes that I receive, I mean, really, it's just so heartwarming. So I think this is such a good time. Because also, I mean, all the research that shows from the University, UC Davis, I can't think of the gentleman who did all the research, but on gratitude and the significant things it does for your health.
Mm-hmm.
It's
yes.
incredible. Yeah, Diana Butler Bass, for instance, is always talking about this, an attitude of gratitude and how that changes not only your mental perspective, but even your physiological response changes, and you become less stressed, and you become a much more relaxed and open person when you have gratitude. So that's probably why, when you walk into a bookstore these days, well, when we could walk into a bookstore, you would see gratitude journals or books of gratitude, because we know now, the research, that an attitude of gratitude is so beneficial.
Absolutely. Sure is for our mental health and even physical health, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same thing in our churches. So, yeah, I love this whole conversation. We could go on forever about this.
Right.
So would you? And I would. But sort of, if we could sum of that together, like for churches right now, could they have a gratitude moment on their Zoom conversation or on their Facebook Live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some churches actually send it out through their e-news. They have a photo of somebody working on something, like I saw one where a woman was working on her third quilt. And she was going to use them for when they could gather together for an auction, or maybe an online auction. And she was doing that because she was just so grateful for what the church had done for her. She wanted to give back to the church and provide this. So there was this photo of her working on this quilt and her little snippet about why she's so grateful in the e-news that was sent out.
I think as well, like much of the time, we don't actually see what goes on. We don't see the work maybe our clergy are doing. We don't see the work our congregations are doing. And there's often a tremendous amount of work going on. Seeds being planted in people's lives. Tim Weep from St. Paul's Knowlton just joined. Morning, Tim. Nice to see you. I mean, that's a church that has a very large, well, they did until, of course, COVID-19, but a very large outreach into their local town in a lot of ways. And, that's not stuff you always physically see, or you don't see the interactions you're having with kids when you're playing hockey. Tim, I've forgotten what your evening group is called that you do. I think you're playing hockey with kids. I forgot what you called that. You had a really great name for that. You don't see that, and yet that's all happening. And that to me is like a beautiful way of saying, wow, this church is touching lives in ways we don't see.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and one of the things we've done here in the Niagara Diocese is to talk about these different things that churches are doing in response to caring for their neighbors. So we've included everything from, people putting on Sunday morning or morning prayer online, to food banks, to making freezer meals to give to people who are not able to go out shopping, or seniors, to providing food bags for those who are precariously housed or isolated, things like that. And we put it in a big article in our newspaper, just listing all of these things. And it's just crazy to behold this big list of these things that people are engaging in. And some just out of all of a sudden, like one church found out that a food program was closing because of COVID-19. So as soon as they heard that, they were like, no, we won't have that. We're going to take care of our neighbors. This is what we are called to do as a community. And they can't keep people out of the program. Like, they have so many volunteers that are participating, and financial gifts coming in to help support it. So
That's it, because people give to a
Want to
cause they
help.
believe in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, hey, Tim responded, hip hop and hockey. That's right. That's one of Tim's
fun.
big things. And it's just a really great ministry, and it's something to be grateful for, that it's out there, it's helping kids. Sure, you don't see it always on a Sunday morning exactly, but you do see it in people's lives.
Right.
I want to think, we were talking a bit at this gathering yesterday about a pivot, because I think that one of the things that obviously COVID-19 has and being isolated. Elizabeth Shama has joined. Good morning, Elizabeth, from our cathedral. Is this pivot that, event-based fundraising and dependence on rentals has proven to be something of a weakness. And so, in a way, as we look at that and think about how we continue to run our churches, what are we pivoting away from? What are we pivoting towards?
Yeah. So churches that depend on rentals and depend on fundraisers, in-person fundraising, I truth be told, I've always had a bit of an issue with that. I mean, it's great. It's good because the finances are going to supporting programs, generally food programs, hygiene, things like that. And so the money obviously is being used for good things. But I find sometimes congregations or parishes become dependent on that as a way for them to not have to participate financially, but they can give of their time, and that is good. And I want to say, actually, I think time these days, pre-COVID, is almost more valuable than money because we are so limited on time. But I think in some ways becoming too dependent on that is a concern in regards to stewardship, and the idea that we give back to God through our time, talents, and treasure. And in some ways, when you see how well you're doing with fundraising events or rentals, then perhaps giving might go down because that needs being met otherwise. Is that controversial?
Well, no, I think it's just an important thing to really think about, because we do look at those numbers and think, okay, we're doing okay. And all of a sudden that income is withdrawn right now, right? I mean, as Carla says, our over 70s don't have much money or energy to support the church. That's true. I mean, a lot of churches are in that position.
Yeah.
So it's true. But on the other hand, as I said, we've had to, it kind of forces the conversation around stewardship when those things are not there for us. And and we need to be thinking about, okay, so how can we make it easier for people to support the church?
Right. Yeah. I've heard that about, people over a certain age who are perhaps on a fixed income. I do want to push back on that a little bit about saying that they may not have enough resources financially. So I find we often make excuses for other people's money, particularly when we're nervous about encouraging people to give financially. So I would say we still need to invite and ask people across the board, fixed income, millionaire next door to ostentatious, have tons of money. We can't say, no, we can't ask Betty and Jim because they're on a fixed income. I think we still need to include asking because in the asking, what you're doing is developing relationships and giving permission for people to say yes or no themselves, or to find a way that they can participate and feel good about it. So obviously it's how you are presenting the case, but I just want to caution people not to say, oh, they're on a fixed income, I don't want to ask them for money.
And how do you feel about, the old-fashioned word tithing, the number of 2.5% and proportion to giving? Do you work with that? So
here's my secret. I grew up in an evangelical world. So the idea of giving your first fruits, 10% off the top, that was pretty well ingrained in me. And then I, kind of left that type of church denomination. And I realized that not all denominations do that. And I thought, what? And then, digging a little deeper and realizing that it's not a fixed number. It's about being a joyful giver or cheerful giver. So I don't like the idea of a 10%. I like the idea of proportional giving in a sense, but no fixed number, because sometimes people are going to give 30% and sometimes people are going to give 2%. But it's all meaningful when you give. So I do interchangeably say the word tithe, and sometimes I have to catch myself because I find actually quite a few Anglicans don't even know what the word tithe means in some way. So I talk about offertory or offering, but I don't necessarily pinpoint a 10%, mostly though because I think sometimes people can give a bigger gift if they're feeling more inclined. So I wouldn't want to limit that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's partly Don Davis has joined as well. Hello, Don. Nice to see you.
Hi,
And Don is the author of the Revive program we're using here. So I'll give a great plug for Revive. We love that program. And we want to see that really grow here in Montreal. So that could be another conversation. But if anyone wants to talk to me about Revive, message me. I'd love to talk to you about that. Good morning, Valerie, as well. Good to see you. Back to the issue of tithing. I mean, really, it's just also about giving proportionately rather than, which is sort of just a different way of thinking about how you give of your money,
right.
And how you think about that, and almost where you have that conversation. Are you thinking about that on Sunday at, the offertory moment, or are you thinking about that at home when you're, making your plans for the month for how, for your finances?
Yeah.
And I just think I love the story of the widow's mite, that Jesus saw this woman give a very generous gift. She was the one who gave somewhat little money. It was just a small coin, but it was all she had for that day.
Right.
And so proportionately, she gave more than all the rich people did that day. And Jesus saw that, and he honored that gift.
Yeah. And she gave willingly and freely, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. And I think that underlying push as well is so very important.
Yeah.
And it was important for her to do that, which you can see in that story.
Tim Weeb says, what do you think about yearly pledging?
I like yearly pledging because people who plan their charitable giving through a year tend to give more generously. And are more involved with their giving. They think it through and they think, why am I giving? What is motivating me to do this? And how is this making a difference? So just as an intentional practice, I think pledging, it can be a spiritually uplifting and wonderful thing. I think sometimes though, when we send out the pledge letter, it's like, you have to pledge because we need to know how much we have for the budget this year. And that's totally the wrong way to go about it. It should be more viewed as a spiritual practice of planning your year and thinking of your gifts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought God knows the numbers, right? So it's something I can talk. He knows my finances.
Yeah.
He knows. And in a way, kind of having that conversation with God is a great place to start, I find, for the whole financial picture of my life.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree.
I mean, yes, we know it all comes from God, but I just think, well, Lord, you know the numbers, so you know what my needs are this year, I find that really reassuring myself. Yeah,
I agree. And I think it's helpful for people to be in that sort of a practice too. And it's particularly helpful for people who are on fixed incomes. Or people who are maybe starting out in life, have left home and then they can plan out their year and say, yeah, I think this is doable. I'm glad I can do this.
Yeah, and I think it helps people because a lot of people who have been supporting the church all their lives, they want to support the church, and
Right.
You can help them with that.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds people that, you can increase your gift, or if you need to, you can decrease your gift. It's okay to do those things. It's invitational to do that. I think sometimes there's people in our churches, when they gave $200 in 1995, they're still giving $200 this day because we haven't had those conversations about, have you considered increasing your gift? Or do you know why you're even giving? Those sorts of things.
I also think the conversation we've been talking about conversation with elders. Well, what about with the generation coming up? I mean, there is another generation that's arrived, those people who are young adults now. And a lot of them are making choices about, their involvement in church, and some of them actually are opting in. And believe it or not, they are, and I see that. And yet we don't necessarily have the conversation with them about financial generosity and ways to give, and we're not necessarily where they are. I mean, we've been talking a lot about automated forms of giving in these times together, and as the generation that's glued to their cell phones, they do everything through their cell phones. I mean, they Uber Eats, they just everything is on cell phones, and yet sometimes the church isn't there. We're still expecting them to have cash to give on Sunday morning at the plate. We have this giving moment in that hymn, the third hymn, in the middle of the service, and that's it. But I wonder if there's a whole conversation with the younger generation we need to be able to have, just encourage.
I know, it's so true. Even when I think of my children who are 9 and 12, in their Sunday school, they don't bring a little offering with them. They don't talk about stewarding your resources, anywhere from whatever. My kids, for instance, I mean, because they're children of a fundraiser, each year they come up with an idea to fundraise. So they make cards some years and sell them and give it to a charity of their choice. But through that process, we're talking about why it's important to support others and why we are motivated to do this and what charity are you connecting with. But we don't do that in Sunday school class. We're not teaching our children those conversations unless you're having them at home. And life is full and very busy. And if I wasn't a fundraiser, I'm not sure if I would think about talking about the 3 jars, charity, savings, and spending. And those sorts of things that hopefully will lead into their young adulthood, where they think, oh, that's right, I should be thinking of ways I can give back to my community.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there are just so many opportunities to give now. I mean, especially on social media, I mean, we're bombarded with opportunities to give. Yeah,
text to give. At concerts, you go to a concert and they're like, text to give, and everybody's got their phone out. And
yeah. And if we're not there, we're not there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I only know of a few churches in our parish who have text to give or an on-site tap to give or debit machine. Yeah. So some people think that might be crass, but I think it's just another tool. In England, they were testing, or so I read an article about offering plates that had a tap in the middle of it. So you would just, choose $10, tap your card and pass it to the next person. And when I showed that to some people, they were appalled at this idea that you would do this. And I just think, I think we might be missing something here if that's a struggle to leap to when, like you said, we're all on our cell phones.
Yeah, that's how we transact everything.
Yeah.
And these are these opportunities to express generosity. I mean, there's something wonderful about expressing your generosity. It's liberating. It's a really positive thing. And so making that possible for people, especially in a cashless society, for people who don't have checks or cash, but they have cell phones, you're providing an opportunity for them to do that spiritual act of giving back to God.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it is in the moment. So that's why you have to provide those ways for in the moment giving. And then sometimes it's planned out through pledges and things like that.
Absolutely.
I'm always telling people every possible means, make it available to parishioners to give, because every possible person is different and their life circumstances. So,
yeah, absolutely. Man, we've covered a lot of territory. I'm still thinking about gratitude moments in church, gratitude, and all thanking people up to 7 times before they know they've been thanked.
Yeah.
In a meaningful way. So it's a lot of stuff. I want to just shift one more time before we go and talk about sort of the missional aspect of things, because I think that's really important as well. Missional planning. I love this idea of having, instead of announcements, have mission updates. Yeah. What a great idea.
It is.
Can you just talk a bit about that? Because I think that's really connected to, financial generosity as well, and the whole picture of our church. And just like that phrase, as I said, from Laurie Gunther Reeser, people give to a cause they believe in.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we sort of work with that?
And I do think that's one of the big pieces missing. When you think of big charities, when you think of sick kids, or you look at Red Cross, you know instantly what they do, what their mission is. But when you think of your parish, do you think, I know what that mission is? Like, some people read a mission statement for a parish after they've been there for however long, and they are scratching their head going, that's the mission here? I wouldn't have guessed that. So we need to tell people all the time in different ways, big and small, it is that we're doing as a parish, as a church body. And those can be done through things like a mission moment in the church. So you're putting on a potluck. Well, how does that tie into your community? So include that in the announcement that we're changing the name of, in your mission moment. Why is this potluck important to your church? Just a little line. Even when your parish council meets, I always think it's important at the top of your agenda to say, we're a people of, this is why we exist. And so that every decision that's made is pushed through the lens of that mission, so you can understand why it is you're doing what you're doing, or so you can get away from mission drift. So often we hear that in charities outside of the church, mission drift. Well, it's because you're chasing the money, or you're chasing the next best thing. But if you stay focused on what it is you've decided collectively to do, you're going to achieve those things and not get sidetracked or get burned out because you're adding in too many things. I think some books that I really love, The Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen, the first opening is just, his first statement is about fundraising is not a response to a crisis. Fundraising is first and foremost a form of ministry. It is a way of announcing our vision and inviting other people into our mission. So if we continuously stay clear on that and sharing that good news through everything we do in our churches, even in our bulletins or our e-news, just reminding people, one line, this is why we're doing this, here's what this is. It would help people to feel more connected to what it is that's going on in the church.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like that would also focus why we do the things we do. If we, as you say, just run everything through the lens of our mission. So why are we having a potluck meal?
Yeah.
Or why are we doing this event or that event?
Yeah. Or the special guest speaker, or why we are collecting socks for homeless, things like that. If we're constantly being reminded, then people are going to always feel connected to that. I know, especially families who can only meet, once or twice a month on a Sunday, because we all are living busy lives, so we aren't able to come to church every Sunday as often as we'd like. But if it's there and we're being reminded every time we are in the building, it'll remind us, oh yeah, this is why I participate with this faith community. This is why my faith is important, and it's being lived out through these different things.
And what does it look like for a church? I mean, involved with the YMCA, they've got a really clear mission, right? They say more than a gym, a cause.
Yeah.
Which I love, and it's unforgettable. So you really know what they're about. What about for the church? And Carla says, is mission always outreach?
I don't think mission is always outreach. The one time I had a priest say to me, for it's living in the world through different ways, but it's living with people and developing community, but not necessarily outreach, but just through being who you are in that context, but representing your faith. So it's not necessarily evangelical. Again, I was raised to think, I have to bring everybody with me to church. But now I see it more as I need to bring myself to other people and represent my faith community. And how are you doing that? And if I know what my church's mission is, being hospitable or generous hospitality is one thing I think about a lot. How am I being that with other people? Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to pinpoint.
Mm-hmm. It's different for every church.
And I was just going to say, every context is so very different. If you're a rural or urban, suburban, church locations, big or small, it's all going to look sort of different. And what your mandate you feel is in that particular community It's really different. But this is why I often tell parishes, host an event when we can now, where you invite community leaders and school principals or teachers, maybe a police officer, and talk to them as a panel and say, what's going on in our community? What is important? What are the trends? And maybe invite other churches to participate so you can figure out where it is that you can make a good and best impact. And if your church is capable and able, choose one thing or two things. Don't overdo it.
No.
Out. But find ways to be meaningful and significant in your community that will bring joy to your community and help you to be a part of things, not just, a city like tucked away in this ivory tower, but participatory.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not necessarily, outreach just means we're not focused in on ourselves.
Right.
A little closed group of people.
Right.
But rather that we're focused in, as you say, in the community in which we live. We know that that we make a difference in some way, maybe small, but that we do.
Yeah.
I was one of the churches I think is really lovely is it's Holy Trinity Lakefield is this school bags program they do every fall. They're a small congregation in the Laurentians, but every fall they do more than 30 school bags for kids who can't afford it. And you know how expensive it is. Yes. Getting kids ready for school. It's like you got a budget for that once in advance. Yeah. And, I think that's a really great little thing they do. So they can't do everything, but that's something that they're doing.
Yeah.
And
they're participating. Yeah, it's not just handing it out, but it's going to the shops, purchasing the items and thinking through these families and their context and their needs. So it's getting you out of your space and letting you feel empathy for others, which is another part of gratitude, I think, but for another day.
Another conversation. Or also community meals, like St. George or St. Anna Bellevue has been putting on community meals. And I love it that they're keeping them going there as takeouts right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing them as takeouts. But there was a whole conversation around about, when we put on things like that, are we there to entertain people or to connect with people? And I think that goes back almost to the pivot we need to make, because a lot of things we've done, we often are entertaining people.
Mm-hmm.
If we put on the event, the fundraiser to entertain them, but something like that, a community meals, actually all you need to do is go and participate and have dinner and make new friends.
Right.
And what you've done is mission, because as you said, you've taken yourself to where people are. You've just reached out and made some new friends.
Yeah. Yeah. When you take the time to connect with people, that you're not just there to provide them a good time, but to be a part of that good time with them. So often I think, the whole Mary and Martha, are you there just serving, or are you there to also engage? And sometimes I think some of our volunteers, I'll say different things, talk to people. We invited this community in together. Let's just be ourselves and connect with people, even if it's just one other person. And that's what it is about, developing our community and making maybe the church seem less like a scary place but that people can enter the doors and just feel welcomed. There is a story in our diocese where the Ministry of Health in that area, the Minister of Health in that area has been contacting the church saying, what are you going to do during this time? And so the church was like, well, of course we're going to serve meals and we're going to deliver them for people. We're going to run errands and things like that. And so now they're like, yes, of course that's what you're going to do. But so often there have been times where the church was not the first place where people would call for support. So I think it's during this time, it's been really eye-opening to see, the church can be a place that people turn to of any faith or non-faith or government organizations. So that's been a really a silver lining through this.
Absolutely. So everybody wants to know the title of that book. They're missed it. It is the spirit. I'm going to put it in the comment section. It is the spirituality of, or a spirituality.
A spirituality of fundraising.
I'm going to type it in.
As you can see, I use this book all the time, and it's very short. I read it 8 times a year. I almost have it memorized, really. But I give it to clergy, and I've given it to donors because I just think it's such an important read for people of faith to learn about fundraising and ministry.
And it's en renewal.
That's right, yeah.
There. It's gone. Oops. It's hard to type when everything's typing slow. Welcome, Brian Perron. Brian Perron, he's the priest at St. Barnabas, St. Lambert. I saw your Facebook post today with your Canada Helps link right in there. Rockin'. See, Brian's right where people are at on Facebook. That's super good. That's like the gold standard. You can do that. Everyone can do that. You can put out a Facebook post, include your link to Canada Helps. It's easy. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just gives people that opportunity to express their generosity. So, yeah. Well, Gillian, I have had so much fun this morning.
Yeah, me too.
Wow,
I could talk shop all day long.
We could do this again. Is there any other? Give me a last thing for us to go home on. We talked about gratitude moments. I think we should be all doing that. We should end our services right now with gratitude moments, with mission updates. Yeah. I love it so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Bring it all together.
Oh gosh, just bring your authentic self. People just want to know what's going on, and it's a conversation. And to tell personal stories of lives changed. That's always so important too. Don't focus on the big picture, but talk about the individuals that you've seen, like the kids that come for hockey, street hockey or floor hockey, or whatever it is they're doing. You know, not that you can tell true name stories, but you can give sort of an example. And then when people hear that story, that's when they're like, yes, I want to be a part of that life-changing thing. And doesn't have to be a big thing. I give to a charity where this woman just came in to rest her head and have a cup of coffee, a homeless woman. And just knowing that I was able to help participate in that made me feel warm and fuzzy and good, and makes me want to continue to give. And I think that's what's important when you're talking about why it is important to give. Yeah. Absolutely. And to be there, not just looking at ourselves, but looking out. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gillian. Thank you for everyone who's participated. It's been really nice to see you all. And thank you for your comments. We'll be here next week, Thursday at 10 o'clock for Beyond the Plate. And blessings on you all. Don't forget Spirituality of Fundraising en renewal. And anyone wants to read that together, we could always do that. Yeah. So you take care. Thanks, Gillian. Bye. And thank you all. Ooh.